Welcome back to the next installment of the highly anticipated South African Rally Raid Championship. The world-class motorsport series hosted on South African soil and proudly brought to you by Toyota, #Team Hilux Rally Raid, Ford, Castrol and ICANN. And what a weekend of racing it was, with not one but two full championship rounds jammed into two action-packed days. Round 4, the day before, was known as the Ingco Vaal 400, but this is round 5. Welcome to the Ingco Vaal 400. We return to the beautiful Stonehenge River Lodge on the outskirts of Parys and on the banks of the Vaal River. The Free State town of Parys and its famous river is home to many things, but for this one weekend in the year, it is home to the fierce battles that take place in the hotly contested South African Rally Raid Championship. Although the crews would have a pretty good idea of what was to come on the Saturday of the weekend's racing, seeing that they just completed 400 kilometers of Free State farmland roads the day before, the route for the Ingco Vaal 400 is mostly different and on virgin terrain. The conditions, however, were still harsh. The early morning freezing temperatures would soon give way to a hot winter's day, but one with lots and lots of choking dust and very little or no wind to blow it away. There were two more things that remained consistent over the two races. Stonehenge once again provided the perfect venue to host nearly 40 race teams, their crews and cars, and the hordes of spectators who came down to share in the action. And for the second race in as many events, the race was once again proudly supported by tools company Ingco.
It's an absolute honour to be a title sponsor for the SA Rally Raid. We're really looking forward to the excitement, having our VIP customers join us, having our staff members join us, and just enjoying the day with everybody.
We're about to go racing in Parys for the second time in 2 days. But first, the organisers had to tally up the points after the race from the day before. In golf, they call it moving day, and this was indeed the time in the championship to make a move for anyone who had any championship winning aspirations. Following 2 wins from the 4 races so far in 2024, the name at the top of the pile belonged to Ingco Vaal, who has collected 98 points so far, or 17 points more than his teammate Guy Bottrell. Bottrell, the winner from round 4, has a small cushion of just 4 points over yet another teammate in the form of Janelle de Villiers, with the Blickner brothers, Rashian Battis, occupying 4th. It was bitterly cold early on the Saturday morning, just minutes before the start of the qualifying race. But there was enough time to catch up with the men who were all involved in the fight for championship honours. And this is the one they're all trying to catch: former multiple champion and current points leader Ingco Vaal.
It's a tricky trade-off between going first and having an open road, but having the risk of hitting things, and going further back, having an more open road, and getting the dust.
The man on the move following his win from the day before was Guy Bottrell, who was planning his strategy for round 5.
Same again. I think navigation's going to be tricky today. There's lots of off-piste where there's no road. So it's going to be a bit of strategy, I think, in road position with the top 10.
Someone who is never far from the front of a race or the top of the points leaderboard is none other than SA's Dakar legend Janelle de Villiers, who once again finds himself in the heat of the battle here in Parys.
Yeah, it would have been nice to finish a little bit higher up, but congrats to Guy. He did a really great race.
Someone who clearly has the pace is Ford's Gareth Woolridge. But Lady Luck has so far not been on the side of the defending champion, who had every intention to turn it around during round 5.
We need to try capitalise on lap 1 today. I think choose a better starting position, or at least have someone different in front of us, and hopefully we can try and attack that way.
And much of the same for the big guy for Sheer Blickner, who is still a relative newcomer to the sport, but surely making his mark.
Yeah, we're going to try. We're going to take it easy with the qualifying. We got a big scare yesterday with a jump, so we can see what happened today.
We are still in Parys for the second half of the double-header of the SARRC. It is round 5, the Ingco Vaal 400. Round 4 saw Guy Bottrell and Dennis Murphy capture their first victory of the season for Toyota Gazoo Racing. What will happen in round 5? They might know the area, they might know the route. However, everyone starts on a clean slate. First up though, it is the Castrol qualifier. It's shorter than normal, but it's still fast. It's still furious.
And for the second time in as many days, it was once again time to go racing here at Stonehenge on the banks of the Vaal. It was cold and it was dusty, but those were just words to describe the conditions. The pace, on the other hand, was blistering from the moment the flag dropped. The qualifying was an exact repeat of the 1.5-kilometer spectator-friendly route from the day before. So crews would have been familiar with the layout and the whereabouts of some of the danger areas, such as this big jump. But it also meant that it turned out to be even more dusty than the day before, making it very difficult to see. Times on a short stage like this one are usually close, but as with the day before, times were multiplied by 10, so a 6-second deficit in real time would result in a minute on the leaderboard. So crews had it all to play for from the word go. There's also a great reward for qualifying near the top, as this allows a crew to have a better pick at their starting positions for the race proper. Lartigan and Cummings knew how important this could turn out to be, so the TGRSA crew pulled out all the stops to claim the qualifying race victory, albeit by a mere 4 seconds. When times are multiplied by 10, it means that Lartigan's 4-second advantage was actually just 0.4 seconds over the King Price Extreme SVR car of youngster Jaden Els and new navvy Johan Swemmer. This also meant that the youngster made it to the top row in qualifying for the second successive day. Round 4, the day before, belonged to the TGRSA squad, with Toyotas ending the day well in command of the race. But Gareth Woolridge and Boyd Dre are the defending champions for a reason and put their NWM Ford Ranger third on the grid. Just a few seconds behind the leading trio and 8 seconds ahead of yesterday's pole setters, the Blickno brothers, in their hashtag Team Hilux Rally Raid Hilux. The Blicknos have made their mark and have become a force to be reckoned with in only a few short years in the sport. And so has this crew. The pace of Eben Besson and Leander Pienaar is simply remarkable. The pair's hashtag Team Hilux machine fell in the lower T1 category or adventurer class for cars with smaller wheels. Yet they are a constant pain in the neck for everyone else as they qualified in 5th. Only just ahead of youngster Sahoud Variawa and French co-driver Francois Cazelet in the second TGRSA Hilux. The action around the outskirts of Stonehenge was frantic, with 30 or more crews all fighting for a top spot. And in a qualifying this short, a mere second could make a huge difference. The second NWM Ford Ranger of Lance Woolridge and Kenny Gilbert recorded the 7th fastest time, just a few seconds ahead of 2 more TGRSA Hiluxes in the form of round 4 winners Guy Bottrell and Dennis Murphy, and Rally Raid stalwarts Janelle de Villiers and Alvin Fogg. With the red-lined rev of Wily Old Fox, Chris Fiss and Blicky Sventer rounding out the top 10. And these were the numbers. It was only a 0.4 second advantage for Lartigan, but that translated to 4 seconds once the times were adjusted. Woolridge qualified third ahead of the Blicknos and Besson, with 3 more Hiluxes, a Ford and a Redline GTR making up the top 10. And this is why qualifying is so important. The top 10 teams get to draw for their starting positions for the first stage of the main event. This is an important part of the race, especially at an event like Paris, where the so-called roads can change after every car, and where dust plays a huge role. The race can almost be won or lost by making the right or wrong decision. Closer to the front of the field means you'll have less dust, but it also means that in some areas there'll be no defined roads, let alone some of the other obstacles one might encounter, such as closed farm gates or even worse, spectators or other traffic on the route. This has happened to Henk Lartigan more often than not in the past, but even so, the race leader chose to start his campaign from first on the road, obviously thinking that dust was going to have a huge influence. Teammate de Villiers would end up riding shotgun for Lartigan from second on the road, ahead of Bottrell and Blickno and Variawa. The Ford duo of the Woolridge brothers would start in 6th and 7th respectively, ahead of Els, Visser and Basson.
Goes for the back of the pack.
This was it, just a short time after the conclusion of the Castrol qualifying race. The crews lined up under the Ingco Arch at Stonehenge for the start of the Ingco Vaal 400, round 5 of the hotly contested South African Rally Raid Championship. This is where the country's best dirt drivers end up fighting for one of the most coveted crowns in South African motorsport. But first, the matter of the 400 kilometers between the contestants and potential glory. The day's action would once again be split up in 2 identical stages, totaling nearly 400 kilometers in distance. It would mostly be on fresh roads, although some sections were going to overlap with the route from the day before. And at 9:45 on a freezing cold Free State morning, it was Henk Ladegan and Brett Cummings who dropped the hammer to get the race underway. The multiple champions didn't waste any time either. Ladegan set a blistering pace from the word go in his efforts to claim yet another victory, but this time the TGRSA duo had company. They were furiously chased by the 2 Neil Woolridge Motorsport Ford Ranger T1 Plus teams, the defending champions Gareth Woolridge and Boyd Dreyer, and brother Lance Woolridge and Kenny Gilbert, who elected to start from 6th and 7th place respectively, after qualifying 3rd and 7th. It was clear the boys in blue were determined to settle the score after missing out the day before, as the 2 NWM Fords were flying. It didn't take long for the Gareth Woolridge Ranger to pass the TGRSA Hilux of Ladegan on the timesheets. And after the first 100 kilometers of the day under the belt, the younger of the 2 Woolridge brothers extended his advantage over Ladegan to 42 seconds. Ladegan was under fire because at this point of the race, the second NWM Ford in the hands of Lance Woolridge and Kenny Gilbert was now also breathing down his neck. Just a further 6 seconds adrift. So the age-old rivalry between Ford and Toyota was once again in full swing. Also in the chasing pack were the TGR Hilux teams of Janelle de Villiers and Alvin Fonk, who elected to start from 2nd on the road. The winners of the Ingco Paris 400 the previous day, Guy Bottrell and Dennis Murphy, who started round 5 in 3rd position after qualifying 8th, and youngster Sahud Variawa and Francois Cazalet, who started their challenge from 5th. Like the previous day, Jaden Els and Johan Swem in the King Price Extreme SVR were once again in the mix and surrounded by big names such as Chris Fiss and Albertus Venter in their Redline Revo GTR. While the leading team in the Adventurer T1 class, Eben Basson and Leander Pienaar, in the hashtag Team Hilux Rally Raid Toyota, who were 5th fastest after the short qualifier and started in 10th. But 10th soon became 9th as they managed to sneak past the GTR Visser on the overall standings nearing the end of stage 1. A few more kilometers remained before the crews could return back to the designated service park for a well-earned rest. But a few kilometers can also decide the outcome of the overall race. When the flag was waved to signal the end of stage 1, or the halfway mark of the Ingco Vaal 400, it was Gareth Woolridge who managed to hold on to a margin of just 50 seconds over rival Ladegan, who was the red and black Toyota in the blue Ford sandwich, as older Woolridge Lance had reached the DSP just a further 22 seconds adrift. The stage was set for an epic showdown. As always, the battles in the overall top 10 were fierce, with youngster Sahud Variawa and Francois Cazalet the best of the rest at this crucial part of the race. Variawa had a slender lead over teammates Guy Bottrell and Dennis Murphy, who in turn had a determined crew in the form of the Blickner brothers breathing down his neck. The big men from Witbank are impressing more and more with every outing, and this was no different. Behind the Blickners, 2 Redline Revo GTRs managed to reach the halfway mark well inside the top 10. The first one was no surprise, as it included the crew of Rally Raid veteran Chris Visser, but the visiting Dutch duo of Rens Hofstra and local lad Wade Harris were having an impressive run to be inside the top 10 and just 40 seconds behind their teammates. Basson and Pienaar were next on the timesheets and of course in the lead of the adventurer class, but also keeping legendary driver Janelle de Villiers at bay, who had slipped to 10th overall at this part of the race after losing a few valuable minutes towards the end of the loop. De Villiers wasn't the only one. Jaden Els and Johan Swem also started the day with race-winning pace, but a setback near the end of the stage dropped them down to outside the top 10, just ahead of Johan de Bruin and Adrian Rutz in the Redline Revo, who of course was competing in the adventurer class against the likes of Evan Basson, who was a little further up the field. Time for a breather for both man and machine at the halfway mark of the Ingco Vaal 400 here at Stonehenge on the banks of the Vaal River. And time to catch up with some of the main players. Lartigan was the first car on the road for the entire morning, but only second on the overall standings.
We always knew it was going to be a little bit tricky opening the road, and in some places there is no road, you have to go make one.
And this was your current race leader, Garrett Woolridge.
I think we got a better grid slot starting further back today. It was a better decision. There is a bit of a breeze blowing.
More good news for the Ford camp as brother Lance was currently in third place.
Yeah, really good. We made up a lot of time. We sort of just didn't Seward's dust. I think he's in Foucher's dust.
The best of the rest at this point in the fight was youngster Sahud Variawa.
That was a really tough loop. Very quick, a lot of big rocks, a lot of places where you can go seriously wrong.
Guy Bottrell currently found himself fifth in the standings and had his work cut out if he wanted to repeat his winning performance from the day before.
If we take the puncture time out, I think we did really well, and then we got caught in the dust towards the end. But lucky for me and unfortunate for Janelle, he wrong slotted and I managed to get past him.
And some insight from a man who knows a thing or two when it comes to strategies.
Obviously, it's definitely an advantage being further back, so the guys further back again today are a lot quicker.
The 30-minute service break also allowed an opportunity to catch up with the crew in command of the adventurer class, Evan Basson.
First, let's call it 35 k's there. Across the river, crossing quite in a lot of rocks, but quite a lot of blind crests, but it's all good.
While all eyes are mostly on the big-wheeled monsters in the T1 Plus class, as well as the T1 class, where the likes of Basson and De Bruin do battle, another category exists with the aim of nurturing raw talent for the future. And in recent times, the Western Cape-based lady driver Pat Clarkson has made a name for herself in the so-called Challenger category. Alongside Dakar biker Sharon Moore, who turned navigator for this event, the young lady was enjoying the outing so far here in Paris.
A lot of straights though, so I prefer when it gets a little more twisty and technical. But yeah, overall pretty good.
It was time to strap in one last time on the very fast and competitive Ingco Vaal 400. Less than 200 kilometers remained and was all that stood between a number of tough races and victory. This was the same as the 200 kilometers they all tackled just before the break, so the pace was going to be hot. And with a whole host of Fords and Toyotas all still in the mix, even the fans who were brave enough to face the dust were bracing themselves for the fierce battle that was to follow. It was therefore no surprise that the race took its toll on a large number of crews who failed to reach the end of a tough event. Between the teams who could not see out the total race distance were the three Redline Motorsport Revo T1 Plus GTR teams who came so close before their luck turned in stage 2. Chris Fiss and Albertus Fenter ran into mechanical problems while Rinst Hostra and Wade Harris were forced to retire after hitting a ditch. A blown turbo on Dave and Tessa Claessen's vehicle also resulted in their withdrawal. And after so much promise the race before and on this day, it all came to nothing for the big brothers in the hashtag Team Hilux Rally Raid machine when an integral part of the rear suspension cried enough after Fischer and Bertus Blickner hit one of the many obstacles along the way. Other teams who did not receive the checkered flag included the Dutch team of Rick van den Brink and Gerda Heymans in their Century Racing CR7 Audi twin-turbo. And the German driver Jürgen Schroeder with Rutgers Fourie reading the notes inside the older Nissan Navara VK50 that lost power steering and suffered numerous punctures. The two SSV Can-Am Maverick teams, Rupert Fourie and Monef van Rensburg, who won the class the previous day, as well as Darren Goodmans and Quinton Lessing, who retired for the second consecutive day, were also amongst the not-so-lucky. Luck was also not on the side of Jaden Els, who is certainly one of the fastest talents to have emerged in the sport for years. But a small mistake with regards to the technical checks on his car led to the youngster's exclusion from the results. And these were the ones that did reach the end. After not being able to bring their CR6 home the previous day, Loert Dupree and Joandre Creer's Farmers Meet CR6 took on the Ingco Vaal 400 and finished 15th overall. They were beaten to the line by stalwart and multiple class champion Lance Trethui, who had enlisted the services of his 16-year-old daughter Taylor Page. What a way to spend some family time. And another great weekend for the Cape Town-based Dutch lady driver Pat Klaassen, who together with experienced motorcycle rider Sharon Moore in the navigator seat of the Can-Am Maverick Rotax, won the Challenger class and finished 13th overall.
Considering the terrain and everything, I think we did pretty well in the Can-Am, so I'm happy with how it went.
We were nearing the top 10, which is an incredible achievement on any round of the SARC. The Redline Motorsport team of Donnie Luddick and Denzel Williamson finished just outside the top 10, and that in their first race in the SARC. They were only 2 seconds ahead of Johan and Sean van Staden's trusty Renault Duster, who had to settle for 12th place overall and 5th place in the Adventurer T1 class. While the focus in the sport is on the overall top 10, no less than 3 Adventurer class cars also made it into the top 10. No surprise that this included the 3 title contenders at the same time. The threesome consisted of Gerard Heinlein and Stompie Maynard in a red-lined VK56, Jan de Bruin and Adrian Ritz in a red-lined Revo, and Eden Basson and Leander Pinot in the hashtag Team Hilux machine. It can get very close between these lot, and on the day it did, but only between de Bruin and Heinlein. In the end, Heinlein pipped de Bruin by just 22 seconds after 400 kilometers of racing. But both lost out to Basson, who completed a double for the weekend with an emphatic victory to jump right back into title contention after a disastrous start to the year.
Pushed hard, we got here. Fortunately, we hit a gate, small gate, and the back pressure directly onto the risk. Had a little risk a bit, but we managed to finish, so that's good.
Basson's finish at the top of the Adventurer category was good enough for 7th overall, which means he managed to relegate the Toyota Hilux of rally stalwart Gary Berthold down into 8th. It was a good comeback by the veteran and Navi Donnie Stassen, who skipped a few races this year. So we still had 3 spots on the podium up for grabs and no less than 6 determined crews all fighting for honours. The gaps were extremely close, and with just a few kilometres to go, it was anyone's guess. With time running out, so too was the opportunity to make a move. And after claiming many podium finishes over several decades, this one was not meant to be for legendary driver Janelle de Villiers, who had to settle for a 6th place finish after enduring a few difficulties along the way. De Villiers and Fonk were beaten to the line by TGRSA teammates Sahoud Variawa and Francois Cazelet, who recorded their 2nd consecutive 5th place finish. The young man is very quickly climbing the ranks and will soon be a force to be reckoned with, no doubt. And then there were 4, but only 3 podium spots left. The contenders? TGRSA's Henk Ladekan and Guy Bottrell, and Ford's Woolridge brothers Lance and Gareth. And what a fight, with only seconds covering all 4 for most of the day. Something had to give, and unfortunately it did. Gareth had driven a superb race all day to maintain the lead that he took early on in the day, but with around 60 kilometers to go, the Ranger suffered from a puncture, and in a race this close, that was all it took. The champion dropped from 1st to 4th in the wink of an eye. This left brother Lance to fight it out with Bottrell and Ladekan, but when the flag was waved, the Ford driver had to concede. He ended up in 3rd, just 1 single second behind Bottrell, who managed to claim 2nd. It turned out to be a good weekend at the office for the Italian, who added the 2nd place finish to his win from the day before. But the drive of the day undoubtedly belonged to Henk Ladekan and Brett Cummings, who were brave enough to open the road and good enough to stay there until the flag was waved. Elation for Ladekan and heartache for Woolridge, who came so close.
But yeah, today was more of a road, and you had to weave your way through the rocks. So a lot more tricky today, easier to make mistakes and go off and destroy the car. So yeah, you had to be on it today.
The track was a lot more rutted out and very dusty on the 2nd lap. We've been in so it's dust the whole lap though, so just difficult to pass.
Here it is, the board that says it all. A victory of just over a minute for Ladekan over Bottrell, with Lance Woolridge just 1 second back in 3rd. A flat tyre dropped Gareth Woolridge down into 4th, with Boriawa and de Villiers rounding out the top 6. And this was it, the moment to cap off 2 days of dusty action at Stonehenge next to the Vaal. The sweet taste to help wash the dust down, and time to reflect on a tough day's racing. Join us in a few weeks when the championship moves deeper into the Free State for the penultimate round in this year's title fight, the Vaal400 in the mining city of Vaal on the 13th and 14th of September. All the action from the 2024 Parys doubleheader was brought to you by Toyota, #Team Hilux Rally Raid, Ford, Castrol and ICANN, in association with the SA RRC.